My name is Andrea L. Hallberg, and I'm the same age I was when my sister finally said the quiet part out loud. We had been planning the winter vacation for almost a year. Not casually, not as a vague idea, but carefully, intentionally, like something precious. A ski resort in Vermont right after Christmas, 2 cabins side by side, a fireplace big enough for everyone to gather around, hot cocoa, snowmen, sledding, tubing, and enough space so no one felt crowded or overlooked. I had done the research myself, compared resorts, checked reviews, called ahead, and asked detailed questions. Most importantly, I made sure the place had an adaptive ski program because my son Caleb is 8 and has sensory processing challenges. I wanted him to experience the trip fully, not as an afterthought, not as a burden, but as someone who belonged. I paid the deposit myself to lock in the dates. It wasn't cheap, but I didn't hesitate. This trip mattered to me. Caleb has spent his whole life being quietly accommodated, shuffled aside, expected to handle things better so other people wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I wanted one vacation where that didn't happen. 1 week where he wasn't tolerated, but included. My sister Rachel said she wanted to help. She always says that. She talks big until actual effort is required, then she disappears. I accounted for that and moved forward anyway. I always did. I included her, planned around her, adjusted expectations so no one could say I hadn't tried. The blow-up happened over dinner at my parents' house. It was a typical Sunday evening. My mom had made baked ziti. The house smelled like garlic bread, and her perfume sprayed a little too heavily, like she was covering something up. My dad had the game turned up too loud in the living room, yelling at the TV like it owed him something. Rachel was already sipping wine before we even sat down, nails freshly done, leaning back in her chair like the world existed for her amusement. Caleb sat beside me, quietly sketching in his notebook. He always brings it when we come over. Drawing helps him regulate when things get loud or chaotic. He was completely tuned out, focused, calm, safe. Rachel leaned over to peek at his drawing, then laughed. Not a kind laugh, not even an awkward one. She looked around the table and said it clearly, confidently, like she expected agreement. Your child has no place on a family vacation. The room didn't go quiet. Only Caleb did. He stopped drawing. He didn't look up. He just slowly closed his sketchbook and stared down at the table, shoulders curling inward like he was trying to disappear. No one said a word. My mom suddenly became very interested in adjusting her napkin. My dad turned the volume up on the TV like he couldn't hear what had just been said. Rachel smirked and kept chewing. Something inside me went very still. I said, "No vacation. I'll cancel everything." Rachel blinked. She thought I was joking. She laughed, actually laughed, and asked if I was serious like I was being dramatic over nothing. I didn't answer her. I stood up and started clearing the table. My mom leaned in quietly and whispered, "Andrea, do you really mean that?" I smiled and didn't say a word. That night, after I got home and Caleb was asleep, I logged into my account and canceled the entire trip. The cabins, the lift tickets, the activities, everything. I lost the deposit and it hurt, but not as much as the thought of watching my son spend a week being subtly excluded by his own aunt. Money was replaceable. That moment wasn't. The next morning, Rachel texted me, "So now we're canceling vacations over jokes. You need to grow up." Then another message. "Not my fault your kid can't handle a little teasing." I blocked her. She's always been like this. When she crashed her car because she forgot to put it in park, my parents helped her get a new one. When she missed her daughter's parent-teacher conference for the 3rd time, my mom made excuses for her. When she forgot her daughter's coat in January, they said she was just having a hard week. They've always cushioned her fall. But what Rachel didn't know was that the vacation wasn't the only thing I'd been planning. For nearly a year, I had been quietly building something of my own. A real business. A startup I'd poured my savings and late nights into. After Caleb went to bed, early mornings before work, research, planning, investor calls, legal paperwork. Rachel had found out about it months ago and immediately assumed she'd be part of it because we were sisters. She had no experience, no skills to offer, but she wanted her name on it. I never committed. She took that as a yes. What she didn't know was that the LLC paperwork came back last week. It was official, and she wasn't part of it. She just didn't know it yet. 3 days after I canceled the trip, Rachel showed up at my front door. No warning, no text. She pulled into my driveway like nothing had happened, like humiliating my son in front of the whole family was just a minor disagreement we'd smooth over with coffee and forced smiles. Caleb was on the couch with his headphones on, completely absorbed in a documentary about wolves, sketchbook balanced on his knees. I was in the kitchen, folding towels, when I saw her through the window, leaning against her car with her sunglasses still on despite the gray sky, iced coffee in one hand, phone in the other, looking like she had all the time in the world. I opened the door, stepped outside, and shut it behind me. She smiled like we were on normal terms, said we needed to talk, said everyone was confused about the drama and wanted things to go back to normal. She mentioned Mom and Dad thought I was being a little extreme and maybe I should think about how I was affecting the family. The word family landed heavy, like she was throwing it at me to see if it would stick. I asked her directly what she meant when she said Caleb had no place on a family vacation. She rolled her eyes and shrugged, like it wasn't even worth explaining. She said it was obviously a joke and that I was being too sensitive again, that I needed to stop treating Caleb like he was made of glass, that he had to learn to take a joke like everyone else's kids. I told her to leave. She laughed, called me dramatic, and said I was just trying to ruin her winter plans because I was bitter about something. I didn't respond. I turned around, walked back inside, and closed the door. She stood out there for a few minutes, knocking once more, then pacing. I didn't watch. I locked the door, sat down beside Caleb, and we watched the rest of the documentary. He didn't ask who had been there. He already knew. That night, my mom texted, "Can we talk soon?" I didn't answer. Then my dad, "Maybe you two should clear the air before this gets out of hand." I let it go to voicemail. They didn't get it, or maybe they didn't want to. Rachel has always been their problem child, wrapped in excuses, their messy little darling. The rules never applied to her, and if they did, they were bent until they broke. I knew she wouldn't let it go, but I didn't expect her to cross the next line. The following afternoon, she showed up at Caleb's school. I was in the pickup line when I saw her standing near the entrance, arms folded, coat open despite the freezing wind, posture stiff and deliberate like she was making a point. For a split second, I hoped she was there for her own daughter or had gotten her days mixed up. Then she stepped directly into the lane as I parked, standing in front of my car like this was some kind of dramatic scene. I rolled my window down just enough to hear her. She said we needed to talk, that I was being unfair, that I couldn't just cut her out like this. I told her to move. She didn't. "You think I'm the villain now for telling a joke?" she said. "You're being ridiculous." That's when Caleb came out, walking hand in hand with his teacher. He saw her immediately. I watched his face change in real time, the way his shoulders tightened, the way his eyes flicked to me and then dropped to the sidewalk. I parked, got out, and walked straight to him. I didn't look at Rachel. She followed us toward the car, ranting about how I was tearing the family apart over one comment. I turned once and said the sentence that had been forming in my chest since that dinner. "You're not being erased, Rachel. You're just not included anymore." She stopped walking. I buckled Caleb into the back seat, got in, and drove away. In the rear-view mirror, she was standing in the middle of the parking lot, arms hanging uselessly at her sides, like she couldn't understand how this scene hadn't ended the way she wanted it to. That night, for the first time since everything started, no one from my family called. No passive-aggressive messages, no guilt-laced voicemails, just quiet. I think they realized I wasn't backing down. And Rachel still had no idea what was coming next. Because while she was busy trying to force her way back into a vacation that no longer existed, the business she thought we were building together was already moving forward without her name on a single document. She had begged to be part of it, told me she was finally ready to grow up, ready to build something real. She had no idea how far I'd already gone without her. About a week after the scene at Caleb's school, Rachel started unraveling. At first it was subtle, random texts at strange hours, little jabs disguised as concern. "Hope you're proud of yourself. Congrats on being the reason no one's speaking anymore." I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to punish her, but because every message felt rehearsed, like she was cycling through emotional buttons to see which one would still work. Then the tone shifted. The messages turned softer, almost nostalgic. "I miss you. I don't understand why you're being like this. We've always had each other." And finally, the one that made me stop scrolling. "This is just a misunderstanding, right?" It wasn't. The voicemails came next. Long ones, rambling. Some sounded like she'd been crying. Others were sharp with anger, listing all the ways I was being unfair, selfish, impossible to talk to. A few times she brought up the business, casually at first, then more directly. She said she deserved to be included, that we had talked about doing it together, that I wouldn't even know where to start without her. I saved every voicemail. By day 10, she escalated again. She started showing up at my house without warning, pulling into the driveway and sitting in her car for a while like she was waiting for me to come out. Then she'd knock, bright smile on, pretending she was just in the neighborhood. Once she brought coffee like it was a peace offering. Another time she brought her kids and talked loudly on the porch about how she just wanted to see her sister again, making sure the neighbors could hear. I never opened the door. But Caleb did hear her. He peeked through the curtains once and asked if we were going somewhere else for dinner. He stopped bringing his sketchbook into the living room and started staying closer to me, hovering in that quiet way kids do when they sense something isn't right but don't have the words for it. That was when my anger finally sharpened. This wasn't about me anymore. I wasn't trying to erase Rachel from her family. She did that herself. But the fact that she kept dragging my son into it, showing up when she knew he'd be home, raising her voice outside our door, it told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't confused. She was desperate to regain control. The night she completely lost it was a Thursday. It was just after 6. Dinner was on the table. Caleb was quietly eating mashed potatoes, methodically, the way he does when he's concentrating. I was at the sink rinsing dishes when headlights swept across the living room wall. I didn't even have to look to know it was her. My stomach tightened. She didn't knock. She banged on the door, over and over, hard enough to rattle the frame. Then she yelled my name. Caleb flinched and dropped his fork. I felt something snap cleanly into place inside me. I opened the door halfway and stepped outside, closing it behind me. She looked awful. Hair messy, eyes red, coat open despite the freezing air. She walked straight up to me like she was ready for a fight. "You seriously need to get over yourself," she said. "You're tearing the family apart." "Over what?" I asked. She scoffed. "A joke." I asked her to repeat what she said at dinner, word for word. She didn't hesitate. She said Caleb was sweet, but different, and she was just being honest, that I couldn't bubble wrap him forever, that he had to learn how the world works. That was it. I told her to leave. She said she wasn't going anywhere until I talked to her like an adult. I told her that was me talking to her like an adult. Then she said the thing that made my blood go cold. "Fine," she snapped. "Keep playing perfect, but don't expect me to stay quiet when you go public with that little business of yours." I didn't blink. "Go ahead," I said. "Talk all you want. You're not in it. You were never in it." She froze. I don't think she had fully believed I meant it until that moment, until she saw it on my face. I walked back inside and locked the door. She stood out there for almost 10 minutes. I didn't look. I sat with Caleb, helped him finish dinner, and then we watched a nature documentary until bedtime like nothing had happened. That night, I called my parents for the first time since everything started. My mom answered quietly. My dad was on speaker. I told them what happened, that Rachel came to the house again, that she screamed, that she threatened me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask them to fix it. I just told them. And for the first time in my life, they didn't defend her. They were quiet, really quiet. Then my dad said something I never expected to hear. "This has gone too far." My mom followed with, "We'll talk to her." Not she didn't mean it, not she's under stress, just that. It was the first crack in the wall that had protected Rachel her entire life. And she felt it. I didn't believe my parents when they said they would talk to her. They'd said that before, after other incidents, other messes Rachel left behind. Every time it ended the same way. She cried, they softened, nothing changed. So when my mom called a few days later and asked if I could come over alone for dinner, I almost said no. But something in her voice felt different, not rushed, not defensive, just tired. When I arrived, the house felt wrong in a way I couldn't immediately explain. No television noise, no music, no forced cheer. Dinner sat untouched on the stove. My dad was already seated at the table, hands folded, staring at a spot on the wood like he was bracing himself. My mom sat across from me and said, "We went to see her." She didn't elaborate. She didn't soften it. She just let the words hang. My dad picked up where she left off. He said Rachel blew up the moment they sat down, started yelling before they even finished their first sentence, accused them of siding with me, of letting me manipulate them, of choosing me over her. When they brought up Caleb, she laughed. actually laughed, said I was using him as a shield to control everyone. That was when my mom finally snapped. She told Rachel she was done excusing her behavior, done pretending cruelty was honesty, done stepping in every time Rachel refused to handle her own life. She told her that what she said to Caleb was unacceptable, and that if she couldn't see why, then that was her problem to fix. Rachel screamed, threw something, stormed into her bedroom, and slammed the door like a teenager. My parents left. They sat there at the table with me, quieter than I'd ever seen them, and my mom admitted something I never thought I'd hear. "We've been exhausted for years," she said. "We just didn't want to admit it." I didn't feel relieved. I felt numb, like something heavy had finally been named but not lifted. The next afternoon, everything shifted. My dad stopped by Rachel's house to drop off mail that had been misdelivered. When he pulled into the driveway, Rachel's oldest daughter was sitting alone on the front steps, backpack beside her, coat unzipped in the freezing air. She told him her mom had dropped her off early that morning and said Grandma and Grandpa would take care of it. No call, no warning, nothing. My dad brought her inside, warmed her up, fed her lunch, and then called Rachel. He told her this could never happen again, not once, not ever, that they would no longer babysit on demand, no longer cover for her, no longer clean up the messes she left behind. Rachel lost it, accused them of abandoning her, said they were punishing her to prove a point. My mom told her calmly that this wasn't punishment. This was adulthood. 2 days later, Rachel showed up at their house and caused a scene so loud a neighbor complained. Her kids were still in the car. My mom didn't open the door. My dad told her through the door that she needed to leave and calm down. Rachel screamed that everyone was against her, that I had turned the family on her, that she'd never forgive them. They didn't chase her. They didn't apologize. They let her leave. For the first time in her life, no one ran after her. 3 days passed. No texts, no voicemails, no surprise visits. Then late one night, I got a message from her. Just 3 words. I messed up. No excuses, no blame, no follow-up. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. I put my phone down and went to check on Caleb. He was asleep, sketchbook open beside him, one hand resting on the page like he'd drifted off mid-thought. For once, the chaos wasn't my responsibility. A week later, the coordinator from the adaptive ski program called me. She sounded confused but pleased. "Someone made a donation," she said. "A large one, in Caleb's name. No return address. Just a note that says, 'For the kids who belong everywhere.'" My heart stopped. She didn't have to sign it. I knew exactly who it was from. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell Caleb. Redemption isn't something you announce. It's something you live out quietly over time. Then she came back again. It was a Saturday morning. I was still in pajamas making pancakes. The coffee hadn't even finished brewing when I saw her car pull up. She sat there for a long time, engine off, hands in her lap. Then she stepped out alone. No kids, no phone. She knocked once. I didn't move. She knocked again, softer. Then she sat down on the top step and waited. For 40 minutes. She left without saying a word. That evening, I got another message. "I didn't want to barge in again. I'm trying, Andrea. I'm not good at it, but I'm trying." I read it and set my phone down. I wasn't trying to punish her. I just wasn't ready to open the door yet. Boundaries don't disappear just because someone finally notices them. On Wednesday, she knocked again. This time, I opened the door. She held out a brand new sketchbook with Caleb's name written carefully on the cover. She didn't try to come in. She said she knew it didn't fix anything, that she wasn't asking to be forgiven today or maybe ever. She said laughing at Caleb hadn't been about him being different. It was about how small she felt around him, around me. About how quickly I chose my son over her, how she'd never realized until now that she'd left me no other choice. I listened. I took the sketchbook. I nodded. And I closed the door. Change isn't proven in apologies. It's proven in what you do when no one is clapping for you anymore. After that, things went quiet in a way that felt earned, not forced. Not the brittle silence of people waiting to strike again, but the kind that settles when everyone finally runs out of excuses. Weeks passed without surprise visits, without late-night messages, without Rachel's car idling in my driveway like a threat. Caleb noticed it before I did. He started sleeping through the night again. The sketchbook stayed open on the coffee table instead of hidden away. He filled pages without tearing any out. Wolves in space helmets, foxes with backpacks, animals that belonged everywhere because no one told them they didn't. One Sunday afternoon, my mom invited us over for dinner. I hesitated, not because I was afraid of Rachel showing up, but because I didn't want to drag Caleb into something fragile. In the end, I said yes for him. I knew he missed his grandparents, even if he never said it out loud. We arrived late on purpose. I wanted to be sure Rachel wouldn't be there. She wasn't. Dinner was simple, almost cautious. No one pushed. No one tested boundaries. My dad helped Caleb fold a paper airplane out of a napkin, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like the room was breathing again. After we ate, my mom asked if we could talk outside. The porch was cold, the kind of cold that sharpens your thoughts. She told me Rachel had been different lately. Not dramatically, not in a way that demanded praise, just different. She'd stopped showing up unannounced. She arranged real childcare instead of dumping her kids without warning. She got a part-time job and kept it. Most surprising of all, she stopped talking about me entirely. No blame, no victim stories, no attempts to pull people into choosing sides. My dad stepped out then, rubbing his hands together like he was nervous. He said, "We didn't want to admit how much she wore everyone down." He looked at me and added quietly, "We should have stood up for you years ago." I didn't rush to forgive. I didn't need to. Hearing them say it out loud was enough for that moment. My mom said something that stayed with me long after we left. "She was selfish with us too," she said. "You weren't the only one. We just didn't know how to make her stop without making everything worse." She paused, then added, "You did. You made it stop." I didn't argue with that. I wasn't ready to turn it into a victory or a redemption arc. Change isn't proven in conversations. It's proven in time. A week later, Rachel sent me a photo. No caption, no explanation. Just a picture of a drawing her daughter had made, a fox with a backpack labeled Caleb's friend. I showed it to Caleb. He smiled, looked at it for a second, and said, "She's getting better at drawing." Then he went back to his comic like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't text Rachel back, not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to anymore. Months passed. Life settled into a rhythm that didn't revolve around managing someone else's chaos. Caleb thrived. I launched the business fully. The adaptive ski program sent a thank you note for the donation, and I tucked it into a drawer without comment. My parents stayed careful, respectful, learning how to exist without fixing everything for Rachel. And Rachel stayed at a distance, not erased, just no longer centered. I used to think belonging meant enduring whatever people threw at you because they shared your blood. I know better now. Belonging is built on respect, on safety, on choosing the people who choose you back. My son belongs wherever he is loved. I belong wherever my boundaries are honored. And for the first time in my life, that feels like enough. Time has a way of revealing what was real all along. Months after everything settled, I realized that the real shift didn't happen the night Rachel made that comment, or even when I canceled the vacation. It happened quietly afterward, in all the small moments where I chose not to bend, where I didn't explain myself, where I didn't rush to fix what wasn't mine to fix. That was when my life actually began to change. Caleb changed first. He stopped asking if people were mad at him. He stopped hesitating before showing his drawings. He started inviting friends over without checking my face first, like he needed permission to take up space. His teacher told me he'd been raising his hand more in class. His therapist mentioned he seemed more grounded, more confident, all because the noise around him had finally died down. Kids don't need perfect families. They need safe ones. I changed too. I stopped apologizing for being firm. I stopped rehearsing conversations in my head before family gatherings that no longer happened. I stopped bracing myself for comments that never came. The business launched successfully, steadier than I expected, and when people congratulated me, I accepted it without deflecting. I wasn't waiting for someone to tell me I'd earned it. I already knew. Ready? Rachel stayed on the outskirts. Not gone, not forgiven, just where she belonged right now. Occasionally, she sent updates through my parents. She was still working, still in therapy, still learning what accountability felt like when no one rescued her from it. She didn't show up anymore. She didn't demand access, and that mattered more than any apology she could have offered. Once, months later, she asked my mom if she could come to Caleb's birthday party. I said no. Not cruelly, not angrily, just no. And the important part was that no one argued with me. No one pressured. No one whispered that I was being too much. My parents accepted it quietly, like people who finally understood that boundaries weren't punishments. They were conditions for being allowed back in. That told me everything. One evening, Caleb and I sat on the couch flipping through his old sketchbooks. He stopped at one of the earlier pages, the ones he drew around the time of the canceled vacation. Darker lines, smaller figures. He looked at it for a moment and then closed it. I like my new ones better, he said. So do I told him. He didn't ask about Rachel. He didn't ask about the vacation. He didn't need to. Kids don't need explanations when they feel safe. They just move forward. And so did I. I used to think strength looked like endurance, like staying, like absorbing hurt and calling it family. I know better now. Strength is knowing when to stand up, when to walk away, and when to let silence do the work words never could. Rachel once said my son had no place on a family vacation. She was wrong. He has a place in a home where he is protected, in a life where he is respected, in a future where no one gets to decide whether he belongs. And so do I.